Welcome to Xevaris, channel Xevaris, twitch.tv/Xevaris. I am here again with Alex, OzmaInTheDark, to discuss gender today.
Hi, I'm Alexandria, a writer and streamer at twitch.tv slash OzmaInTheDark. That's OZMA in the dark. Social identity theory is what people do, just instinctively. In a modern society, what's the importance of gender? We can categorize ourselves we do categorize ourselves in any number of ways. A gamer, Twitch streamer, a writer, an artist, all sorts of things can be used for categorization in modern society. I've struggled to figure out a good reason outside of maybe aesthetics. I'm not quite sure the purpose behind the the gender categorization in terms of social gender. Obviously, that doesn't change what physical aspects of the body exist. What's the importance? I mean, we can identify ourselves as if I identify myself as a woman, what does that tell you outside of how I'm very superficially perceived? It doesn't tell you what job I'm good at. It doesn't tell you how strong I am. It doesn't tell you what I'm good at or bad at. It doesn't tell. It doesn't tell you. I don't know what the important information is. I don't know what the value there is in gender in modern society.
Well, so I think that you're putting, when you say gender in this particular context, you're talking about like an individual's gender says about that individual, but gender can be used for lots of benefit when referring to society. So women as a whole, the gender female that exists inside of the United States, can be described with generalities, and that can actually tell you something if you're talking about women, like biological women in general, or just any woman, since we're talking about all women. So you're right. If I introduce myself as you, hi, my name is Ben and I'm a man, doesn't tell you much outside of the fact that I just told you I have a dick.
Not necessarily.
Well,
but
that's
probably
the implication generally.
Well, yeah, but then we have to rework societally, or even our usage of the gender man and woman, because otherwise you're just there's just assumptions about genitalia. For instance, what about men who men who were born without a dick, or men who don't have dicks? There are a lot of circumstances.
Right. I think we're getting a little conflating with gender and sex. So, I mean, if we go back to gender has a lot to do with how our culture says things about a specific gender. Men generally have beards. I mean, I'm sporting one right now. That is culturally the case, at least around here for the most part. Men grow facial hair. That's a cultural representation of gender male. But that goes back to what you were talking about. It's an aesthetic thing.
Yeah, because I can potentially see a lot in terms of aesthetics, but outside that,
well, we were just having
there's oftentimes completely separate information that's needed to accurately categorize it, and I don't know how well of a generality gender actually serves.
Well, I mean, if we want to talk about what we were discussing earlier in this own house, men take out the trash.
Okay.
But I mean, that's a non-aesthetic representation
what if Ronda Rousey wants to take out the trash?
Yeah, no, it's a generalization. It's not men only take out the trash. It's men generally take out the trash.
Yeah, but there's nothing about trash that suggests that. Because, there is a certain amount of, since that generalization already exists, it's promoted. So, anyone can take out the trash. There's no, unless there are physical limitations, which isn't a guarantee.
Yeah, but anybody can look like the other gender. Like,
What?
but anybody can look like the other gender. So like,
Um,
I don't know if that's necessarily a way to defeat the fact that there is a use outside of aesthetics just by saying, oh, anybody could do it. Well, anybody can look like the other gender. That's an aesthetic thing that anybody can do.
oh yeah. Thank you. So there's even less use than I thought. Um,
Well, no, the usefulness comes from what humanity determines as useful. So like, uh, I mean, my Twitch streaming right now is useful to me because I like it. I derive enjoyment out of it.
well,
Humanity
yeah.
seems to derive some form of enjoyment out of, or at least our culture derives some form of enjoyment out of some form of gendered society.
Well, but does it?
I am
We're talking
very
about
happy
like
when I
their
have a beard.
benefits and what?
I am very happy when I have a beard.
Well, yeah, but that yes, you are happy growing a beard, and I would be unhappy to grow a
There
beard.
you go. There's usefulness.
But like, if we're talking about so a lot of stuff also gets lumped into gender categories, and a lot of stuff has just been it is appreciated because that's how it's always been, and I don't think that's I don't like to use like it and it's always been this way justification for utilizing that sort of categorization.
So like the what we like to generally do is what provides the most benefit. So if we go back to the 50s, we were looking at like harsh gender roles that actually negatively impacted large segments of society. Reducing that has resulted in benefit, but removing of gender roles would require that you demonstrate that that has a tangible benefit over the current gender rolled society. Can you do that?
Um, I'm not I'm not quite sure what the I
So
mean
back
isn't
in the
that
50s, we were like,
so
hey, if
so
we
isn't
let
that
women, hey, hold on, if we let women enter the workforce and tear down some gender roles, it'll be beneficial for society. Look, guess what? It was beneficial for society. They were right. Now you might be sitting here saying, "Hey, we should remove all gender roles because it's beneficial." How?
generally you remove stuff because you can't find a use for it.
No,
This is
that's
one of
not
those things.
true. You things that are without use aren't necessarily removable. It's only things that have negative impacts on society that should be removed. Otherwise, you'd need a really good reason to remove something that has neither positive nor or negative detriments. Like you'd have to demonstrate that there was a reason for its removal.
I see. Now the fight's gone my end. Social benefits. I mean, I guess the social negatives are by depending on how much stuff gets grouped into gender, you end up with a lot of you end up causing society to be more segmented into people to strive for people to strive for things that they wouldn't necessarily otherwise if they weren't in that classification. Because yeah, we categorize things, then we adopt an identity to the group, and then we compare that group. So, you know, and depending on how well we're aware of it, people can end up putting down the other side, and then you end up with a men versus women thing. I mean that's kind of these instinctual social these instinctual cognitive ways that we do things, likely originating from the general survival benefit, like oh. Plants that are bitter are likely poison and you shouldn't swallow them, that sort of thing.
Right.
Now that doesn't mean every plant that you bite into that's bitter is poison, but I mean that comes down to the quality of the categorization.
So it sounds like you're saying that we need to break them down because it creates an us versus them mentality.
It helps reinforce it. I mean,
Wait,
technically, it doesn't.
reinforce the us versus them?
well, the
I'm asking
instinct.
about the removal, not what they currently are. I'm asking if the removal of gender roles would remove us versus them mentality between the genders.
The purpose would be to uh, remove the gender categorization. So there's so that there um, isn't to remove the motivation for putting one gender um, or overinflating any either or regardless of what gender a person chooses to designate themselves.
So how do you get past the fact that men and women look different? We
I
are a
mean,
sexually dimorphic species. By definition, we look different. So what I'm saying is, I don't think you can remove the us versus them mentality for men and women. Like, you would have to, like, if essentially what I'm saying is, if we follow down your path, it won't solve anything, because at the end of the day, men and women look different, and there will ultimately be an us versus them mentality. Wouldn't the better resolution be trying to resolve the us versus them mentality than by making massive sweeping changes to the culture? Wouldn't it be better to say it's okay for men and women to be different, and then for them to not be unequal because of it? Wouldn't that be easier to do than just removing gender?
um, hmm,
As in, what I'm trying to imply is, isn't the current pathway that we are currently on in the U.S. American culture the correct one? Because we are improving steadily over time. I mean, with hiccups in the way, obviously. But what I'm trying to assert is the way we have been doing things is likely the best way to do things, and to make a massive sweep to remove gender from society, something that I think can have negatives and can have positives. As in,
well,
I get happy because I have a beard. Positive.
what about all the women with beards? Are they supposed to not be happy
Well, I
because
mean,
then they're
why can't
not
they be
real
happy?
women?
Why can't they be? No, that's my point. That's what I was trying to point out, is like, instead of removing gender roles, just make it okay for women to have beards if they want them. They would just be
Like I
women
understand the
with
mentality. It's
beards.
just one of those things where, as we remove the categorization, I'm not sure what aspect of the categorization of gender
Well, because
as a
almost every
whole is
are you
beneficial.
trying to assert that if it was suddenly okay for women to have beards, that all women would have beards? No, the vast majority
No,
of women wouldn't have beards. There would just be some women who have beards, and you can't define an entire group by a minority. That's like saying all, like, I'm not saying all men have beards either. I'm just saying, as a man, having a beard makes me happy, and some men having no beard and a clean shaven face makes them happy.
then it doesn't sound like beards have anything to do inherently with being a man outside of that men most oftentimes are able to or are more likely to be able to grow them
That's
and
the
have a
answer,
desire to grow.
that they can more often than not grow them and have a desire more often than not to wear them. It is a feature of the male gender.
I mean, it's a
This is
feature.
nuanced. It's not like, okay, I have man, and then I have a bullet point of 30 different things that every man will have. That's not how, at least my understanding of how gender works. It is a subset of things. Man can have beard, can not have beard, can have varying shades of beard. Like, these are subsets of things that men have. And you distinguish them by what majority of the things. So, like, most men will excuse me, I'm trying to describe a really nuanced topic, and I'm not giving it a good enough go. So, sexed men and sexed women are two groups of people, and we're trying to gender these people. So when we're looking at genders, we're looking at what most people will fall under for a specific thing. So most men will have either a beard or no beard. It will be shaved to some degree. They will have some form of short to medium length hair. Um, like these are things that can be the case for men. And then you subset the sexed men into this category from there. Now, some of those sexed men might be trans. They might feel as though they are a woman, and therefore present themselves in such a way that they would be then categorized under the gender female, which has subsets of, let's just look at our culture: smooth, shaved legs, longer hair, makeup, maybe, like lots of different gendered culturally female things in America would be presented by those sexed men, and therefore would be gendered as woman. Like
So
this has a utility. It's just not
yeah,
the
but
same utility as sexing somebody.
yeah, but then you get into the thing where depending on how you choose to categorize what a man and woman is, it's very easy for people for a small segment of people who identify as men were born with male characteristics, but they don't fall into much of the categorization. Then it's very easy. It would be very easy for them to not feel like they're a part of the group and not feel like they're considered a man by most people. And
Yeah,
then
yeah, and that's what I was saying earlier. Instead of just removing gender as a whole, we just expand gender so that it better, or we improve gender so that it better encapsulates the rest of society. And the other thing I'd like to point out is as I stated from the outset, gender is designed to describe an entire large, extremely large, billions large group. It's not necessarily designed in this way to handle an individual.
yeah, but people do describe individuals by gender. You can't like run away from the fact that it is going to be used for individual descriptions.
Yeah, I like what this
And
guy says in my chat, Cheeky Wando. Listened for like 2 minutes, but removing gender would probably be bad. But like removing the stereotypes of gender is probably good. This is more or less what I'm trying to say. Like, if you removed all of gender, I don't think you, like I was asking you earlier, could you name like large positives that would result from removing gender from society? And what would happen to me? Would I then therefore not like to have a beard?
this is one of those things where maybe Alex got a little too philosophical and less about how the world functions. But my main problem isn't so much whether or not we remove gender. It's just when I look at how things are moving to try to um, get closer to allowing people to uh, do what they're good at, do what they enjoy, do what's interesting to them, and more and more towards that. As we move more and more towards that, the categorization starts to really break down. So it's one of those things where I'm not quite sure uh, uh, what sort of aspects that are helpful for an identification that's not going to just have the potential of leaving segments of the population out or making them feel like they don't qualify as being whatever gender they that people normally view them as. And obviously, people can describe themselves how they feel like they describe their
Right.
would feel like their gender is. But like,
So Cheeky
uh,
Wando's got some really good points that I just agree
oh,
with out here. It's just that, yeah, you want these stereotypes to break down. Gender is still valid as a nuanced way to talk about sex in public without talking about sex in public. It really is. Honestly speaking, gender comes around because people don't want to talk. Um, People don't want to talk about dirty shit in public, but they want to talk about dirty shit in public. That's why we have gender. That's why you're like, when you're out at a bar and you're like, and you meet somebody and they're like, hey, I'm a lady. Like, you know what that fucking means. When I go out to a bar, if I saw a bunch of people, if I saw a bunch of agendered robots, how am I supposed to get what I want that night?
what if you have dual gendered robots?
Dual gendered robots. Dual gendered.
They've got all you could want.
But no, this goes back to the fundamental issue. This is why gender exists. Yeah, Cheeky, I do separate gender and sex. But it's more nuanced than that. So sex is almost exclusively used in like a scientific sense.
Like, well, yeah, but you could also just like remove male and female and just go with this is like primary and secondary, or like alpha and beta. Like the alpha thing is the default, which is actually the female stuff, and then a lot of the male stuff got band-aided onto that, so that would be the beta stuff. Not alpha and beta, now that I think about it and say it out loud, because that's going to create social implications, but yeah.
Right.
Yeah, I mean, to some degree, I think they're primary and secondary sexual characteristics for a reason, because that is what a lot of people care about when it comes to sexual stuff. So in terms of sexual orientation and gender, I just think that they, them, which is more common. We have like other gender identifiers, but I think things need to be just sorted out and the reasons made clear. Just to
Cheeky, we have to call it Thanos now, because you just named it. Gender is inevitable. Gender is Thanos.
Damn it. But I am Alexandria.
I just want to call myself Thanos now. That's my gender pronoun is Thanos.
Especially if you get all the Infinity Stones. I mean, that then you have all the gender power.
Oh, oh my God. Wait. Each of the gems is like the LGBTQ. Yeah, there it is. 5. LGBTQ.
Well, I mean, you're ignoring I and A and plus, but
well, I'm sorry, there isn't 7 Infinity Stones. There aren't 7 Infinity identities.
Maybe humanity just needs to try harder with that.
We need to create 2 more identities for the what the fuck?
Okay, you've made a strong gender.
Yeah. So
argument
me and Cheeky's point
like,
here is that gender is a human construct for interpersonal interpersonal relations with via conversation, effectively.
Well, yeah, but like,
and it has a tremendous use for that in keeping ourselves prudish, because humans are prudish. Well, if we were more open, we would just talk about sex all the time like it was no big deal.
Well, if we were more open, we'd just be naked all the time. Well, not in cold areas, obviously.
Obviously, that'd be really bad. Minnesota is so fucking cold. Although today it's pretty nice.
It's 80 degrees right now. It's a perfect nudity time.
What the fuck? So I think we answered your question. The answer.
Yeah, no, it does seem like that question has been answered. It's just like really struggling because yeah, there's genuine categorization that occurs, but yeah,
and there's utility in interpersonal communications with gender. Now we just need to do what Cheeky was talking about here and remove stereotypes and make it okay for women to have beards and men to wear dresses, and
yeah,
I guess make it okay for Cheeky to go outside when it's cold outside with no clothes.
We need to stop being prudish.
Yeah.
You've sold me on your
I've won the debate, everyone. Debate
okay.
won.